When I was asked to do this, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And after watching videos of fast storytellers, I really did not want to do this today for 2 reasons. Yet, here I am. So, one reason being that I am an extremely private person when it comes to my personal life. I rarely talk about personal things to my closest friends and family, let alone talking to a bunch of strangers. 2, I don't believe in the word failure. It doesn't, that word just doesn't exist in my vocabulary. I don't believe anyone really fails. It is all trial and error in life. Everything in life is a lesson that is meant to teach us something. But if you call it failure, you are then discrediting the journey of the lesson. So basically, I ended up freaking out about the storytelling experience, trying to figure out a way to get out of it, to be quite honest. And then I realized I was failing at Failure Lab. And I hadn't even jumped up on the stage yet. So I do, however, love to write and tell stories, just not that of my own. So here we go. I'm going to read you a story about one of the most challenging times in my life. So I'm going to begin like David Copperfield. I'm born, I grew up, kind of unpack my life a little bit, but I'm just going to give you the clip notes. I grew up in a suburb of Grand Rapids in a good and happy home when I was a kid. Then my home became a broken home. I was separated from my brother, where we both became basically the only child of the family. I had no relationship with my brother for many years. This is where I started being a lone wolf, and to this day, I continue to be. I had a revolving door relationship with both of my parents, which was anything but sturdy. I was also in a very abusive relationship throughout my time in high school with a love of mine that was filled with a lot of trauma. But I'm not going to really unpack all that. I'll just say that the happy life that I had as a young child was not how it was in my adolescence. I struggled hard. I was always a creative at a young age. I loved crafts and arts. I'm a typical Aries in many ways. Yes. And a real-life gypsy, not just by nature, but by blood. I get stir-crazy and lose my edge if I'm in the same spot for too long or working on the same thing for too long. I tend to lose interest easily. I am extremely creative and I have a lot of ideas, but I do not have the patience to always see them through, which is what makes me a successful director to this day, because I get an idea, I tell my team how to execute, and I can move on to the next idea. I found a good balance for my talent and lack thereof. In high school, while everyone was planning for their future of what they wanted to do when they grew up, where they were going, what they wanted to do, I was partying and avoiding that very idea. Part of my dad's rule, however, was that all kids had to go to college, yet I had to pay for it. I never wanted to go to college. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to live here anymore. I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience something. The core of man's spirit comes from new experiences. One of my favorite authors wrote, "Make a radical change in your lifestyle and begin to boldly do things which you may previously never have thought of doing or been too hesitant to attempt. So many people live within unhappy circumstances and yet will not take the initiative to change their situation because they are conditioned to a life of security, conformity, and conservation, all of which may appear to give one peace of mind, but in reality, nothing is more damaging to the adventurous spirit within a man than a secure future. The very basic core of man's living spirit is his passion for adventure. The joy of life comes from our encounters with new experiences, and hence there is no greater joy than to have an endlessly changing horizon for each day, to have a new and different sun." I wanted to be on my own. I absolutely hated it here. I associated this place with negativity and trauma. I had to get out. And then I saw a way out. The loophole I found myself in was that I was going to follow my dream by moving across country and living in Colorado, a dream I stole from my brother, or so he told me. While technically going to school, of course. So I didn't choose a nice community college. I chose to get myself into an insane amount of debt without ever really understanding what that really meant for myself later in life, because I was never taught what taking out a shit ton of money with student loans would do for me as an after effect. So here I am today. So I enrolled in a private art school across country. But first, I moved to Florida with my mom and her husband for a couple of months before my semester would start. Then my mom drove me all the way across country, dropped me off with all my shit at the dormitory, and off she went, and off to school I went. I never looked back. Living in Colorado was everything I dreamed it would be, and more. Sitting outside of my dormitory balcony, drinking coffee and looking at the Rocky Mountains every day made me feel a sense of high. Rocky Mountain high. I met a ton of really great people, and a lot of really weird people too. I was in art school, so I had complete freedom for once, where I did not have to answer to anyone but myself. I tried all kinds of new things that I ended up loving: Chinese food, hiking, and even drugs. I mean, most people can relate to me regarding the drug situation in college, right? Like, college was fun. So, however, it didn't end fun. After a year of living there, a friend from back home came to live with me and my new best friend from college, which ended up being a real struggle and yet comforting. It's never easy living with three girls, let alone one that was my past and one that was my present. It made for a lot of uncomfortable situations, and we had a lot of arguments. The living situation ended up being a very toxic one. I also worked full-time, went to school full-time, and had a brand new puppy. When I say I was stressed, it is a complete understatement. I was a straight-up zombie, going through the day like a machine, yet found time to party, of course. I needed to party to stay afloat, but it became more than just partying. It became a way of life. You overlook yourself and you try to catch up, but there's no catching up, just crashing, and that's exactly what I did. I started flunking classes, dropping classes so I wouldn't have a bad grade affect my GPA, and yet I was out of a ton of money because I had to drop the class, then I still had to pay for the class, and then I still had to retake the class and repay. So I basically just screwed myself with more debt. One night, we threw an 80s party, and I celebrated ridiculously hard. One of those blackout kind of parties. I woke up the next day in a place I don't remember how I got to, had a seizure, and sliced my nose in half from hitting a wall. I knew I couldn't continue to do this anymore. I was slipping away hard and fast without knowing how to pull myself out of it and get back in control. The chaos of school, work, living situation, dog mom, and drugs ended up being too much. That's when I called my mom. I decided to quit. I needed help to get myself out of the situation, and this is what leads to my failure. Story for you. I left my dream of living away on my own because I couldn't hack it. I couldn't take care of myself. Freedom was too much. I needed help to take myself out of the situation that I was in. I needed saving, and to me, that was failure. Within the month, my mom came back to Colorado, packed me up, and once again made the road trip across country for me to finish school in Tampa. I felt that I left with my tail tucked between my legs. I didn't finish what I set out to do. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel strong. It's not always necessary to be strong, but to feel strong. And I definitely did not feel strong. Having to ask for help, genuine, raw help, that was my rock bottom.